Welcome to a place where silence breaks, secrets surface, and power finally shifts. These are not loud stories filled with screaming ratchets or sudden miracles. These are the kind of truths that unfold slowly, inside offices, inside marriages, and behind closed doors where loyalty is tested and trust is quietly sold. Here, careers don't collapse by accident, and love doesn't fade without reason. Every story reveals how patience can be used as a weapon, how respect can be denied without warning, and how betrayal often comes from the one who claims to protect you. But these aren't stories about losing. They're about what happens after the door closes, after the truth is exposed, and after control slips away from the wrong hands. If you've ever been underestimated, silenced, or manipulated while being told to stay grateful, you're in the right place, because the strongest revenge doesn't scream, it succeeds. 3 years of loyalty were traded like loose change, and I didn't realize how coordinated the exchange had been until everything collapsed at once. At work, dedication was met with excuses. Raises were always just out of reach, promised and postponed until the word soon lost meaning. At home, encouragement sounded genuine, but it was carefully measured, like someone steering a conversation away from dangerous truths. I trusted both spaces, never imagining they were quietly connected. The first crack appeared the day I was fired. The accusation wasn't poor performance, it was betrayal. Job hunting, they said, showed a lack of commitment. The irony burned, but what hurt more was how prepared my boss seemed, as if the decision had been rehearsed. The tone wasn't professional disappointment, it was personal. That night, the silence at home felt heavier than usual. A casual remark slipped out, referencing internal meetings, budget limits, even my raise requests, details I had never shared. The room went cold. When questioned, the answers came too quickly, too smoothly. That's when the truth began to surface. Conversations held without me, complaints framed as concern, ambitions reduced to inconveniences. The person I trusted most had been quietly advising the person who controlled my career. The betrayal wasn't loud, it was methodical. Late-night work calls suddenly made sense. The way my confidence was chipped away at home mirrored how I was diminished at work. Doubt had been planted carefully, nurtured until asking for more felt unreasonable. Power wasn't abused in one place. It traveled freely between the office and the marriage. Anger came later. First came clarity, the realization that loyalty had been exploited, not once, but twice, by people who benefited from my silence. I replayed moments I once dismissed, missed anniversaries blamed on deadlines, defensive reactions to simple questions, encouragement to stay patient whenever I talked about growth. What they didn't expect was resolve. The manipulation that trapped me for years became the evidence that freed me. Connections were rebuilt, confidence reclaimed, and plans formed without permission. The truth no longer needed to be hidden because it no longer had power over me. The moment everything changed wasn't when I was fired, it was when I understood I had been betrayed long before that day. The marriage was built on reassurance, on nods and soft promises that sounded solid enough to trust. Every time work frustrations spilled into the kitchen late at night, comfort came easily. There was always encouragement to stay patient, to not rock the boat, to believe loyalty would be rewarded. Those words felt supportive then. Now they sound rehearsed. The first hint of something wrong arrived disguised as coincidence. A denied raise matched a tense dinner. A critical performance review followed in arguments at home. Decisions at work began echoing private conversations I never remembered sharing outside those walls. It felt unsettling, but love has a way of blinding reason, especially when doubt feels disloyal. The truth surfaced slowly, like a crack spreading across glass. A notification flashed on a phone left unattended. A familiar name appeared where it didn't belong. At first, denial was easier than understanding. Then came the explanations, too detailed, too defensive, meetings framed as advice, opinions offered casually, career choices discussed as if they were household matters, not boundaries crossed. The secret wasn't an affair in the traditional sense. It was worse. It was influence. Quiet, consistent, self-serving influence. Workplace decisions shaped over shared dinners and private frustrations. My ambition reduced to a problem that needed managing. My boss wasn't acting alone. She was being guided by someone who claimed to love me. Every sacrifice suddenly felt transactional, missed holidays justified as support, long nights praised as commitment. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, concerns were reframed as weaknesses. My value was negotiated without my presence. Trust wasn't broken in one moment, it was eroded in whispers. Confrontation didn't bring relief. The truth came wrapped in excuses, good intentions, shared stress, attempts to protect me from disappointment, as if betrayal could be softened by concern, as if stripping someone of agency could ever be love. The fracture spread quickly. At work, confidence vanished. At home, safety did too. The realization that two pillars of life had conspired, quietly, deliberately, changed everything. There was grief, but also a strange clarity. The power they shared depended on my silence, and silence was no longer an option. Plans began forming without consultation. Contacts returned calls. Opportunities appeared once fear stepped aside. The same person once discussed like a liability became an asset elsewhere. The marriage didn't survive the truth, and neither did their control. Silence was treated like virtue for a long time. At work, swallowing disappointment was called professionalism. At home, patience was praised as maturity. Every slight was met with restraint, every dismissal justified as temporary. I learned how to wait, how to soften my words, how to convince myself that respect would arrive if I endured long enough. Years passed that way. Raises were denied with polite smiles. Credit for my work drifted toward others. At home, reassurance came wrapped in subtle warnings not to push too hard, not to seem ungrateful. The message was consistent in both places. Stay small, stay quiet, stay useful. I didn't realize how coordinated that message was until the cost became impossible to ignore. The betrayal wasn't explosive, it was slow and calculated. Private frustrations shared at home found their way into workplace decisions. Weaknesses spoken in confidence were reframed as limitations in meetings I was never invited to attend. The same voice that urged patience at the dinner table was quietly shaping narratives about my value elsewhere. My silence made it easier, my trust made it profitable. There were nights spent questioning myself instead of questioning them. Moments when anger surfaced, only to be buried under the fear of causing conflict. I believed endurance was strength. What I didn't see was how that belief was being used against me. Disrespect thrives where it isn't challenged, and patience can be mistaken for permission. The turning point didn't come with shouting or tears. It came with exhaustion, a deep, steady realization that silence was no longer protecting peace, it was protecting manipulation. The truth about my husband's involvement surfaced not as a confession, but through patterns too clear to deny. Advice given behind my back, decisions influenced under the guise of concern, loyalty weaponized as control. Instead of rage, something steadier took hold: resilience. Conversations stopped being apologetic, plans were made privately, confidence returned quietly without announcement. Connections outside that carefully managed world reminded me who I was before patience became a cage. The transformation wasn't dramatic, but it was complete. Opportunities appeared once I stopped asking permission to want more. The same people who benefited from my silence struggled to understand my resolve. They expected anger. They expected collapse. What they got was distance. In the end, silence taught me its true cost, and patience showed me when to walk away. Revenge didn't arrive the way movies promised. There were no raised voices, no slammed doors, no public accusations. It arrived quietly, the moment everything finally made sense. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was logistical. Decisions at work that ruined years of effort had been influenced at home, guided by someone who knew exactly which insecurities to whisper and which ambitions to downplay. My husband never argued against my dreams openly. He simply redirected them when no one was watching. Once the truth surfaced, anger felt unnecessary. Rage would have given them what they expected. Instead, restraint became the sharpest weapon. Conversations turned neutral. Questions became observations. I listened more than I spoke, and in that silence, people revealed far more than they realized. Emails, calendars, and casual remarks confirmed what denial once hid. Private influence over professional outcomes, favors traded as concern, and my career treated like collateral damage in someone else's strategy. There was grief, but it didn't slow anything down. The focus shifted from confrontation to execution. Contacts were called without explanation, skills refined without announcement. Interviews were accepted quietly, while at home, reassurance continued to flow from someone convinced control was still intact. He believed patience meant weakness. He believed silence meant surrender. The offer arrived faster than expected. Higher pay, higher visibility, a role that placed me in rooms where decisions were made, not whispered about. The acceptance didn't come with celebration, it came with calm. When the news became public, it traveled faster than any accusation ever could. Congratulatory messages replaced sympathy. Industry recognition did what explanations never needed to. That's when the panic started, just not on my side. Calls came in with softened tones. Regret was implied, never admitted. The job I lost suddenly became a mistake. The marriage suddenly needed honesty. Both offers arrived too late. Power shifts don't announce themselves. They reveal who was relying on imbalance to survive. At a professional event weeks later, introductions were made without context. Titles spoke for themselves. The person who once influenced my downfall stood across the room, unable to meet my eyes, stripped of relevance by nothing more than my progress. At home, the silence changed shape. It no longer belonged to me. Justice didn't scream. It succeeded, and that was louder than anything they'd ever said. If this story felt real, it's because situations like these happen every day, quietly, painfully, and without witnesses. Justice doesn't always arrive with apologies or closure, but it always recognizes growth. If this story spoke to you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next chapter. More stories are coming, stories about hidden betrayals, shattered trust, and the calm strength it takes to walk away and win. Until next time, remember this: silence is powerful, but success is undeniable.